I thought my secret was safe in a hidden folder, but my oldest stepbrother Julian found everything. Now, he's demanding a price for his silenced one that has to be paid in the dark, in the closets, and
Dear
whenever our
listeners,
parents aren't looking. Before I began telling this complicated story of my channel, subscribe, leave a like and write the comment which city you are listening from. This is very important for us. And now, enjoy. My stepbrother, Julian, listening, was always the shadow in our house. Older by 5 years, he was quiet, observant, and possessed a coldness that made me avoid him whenever our parents were away. We lived under the same roof, but we were strangers, or so I thought. I had a secret, a folder on my laptop titled Calculus Notes, that contained photos I'd taken for myself. Photos that were never meant for anyone's eyes. They were my only escape from the suffocating perfect daughter image I had to maintain. But I made a mistake. I left my laptop open while I went to take a shower. When I came back, the room was cold. The door was slightly ajar, and my laptop was gone. I found him in his room, sitting in the dark with my laptop glowing on his lap. He didn't look up when I walked in. He just scrawled slowly. "I didn't know you were so expressive, little sister," he said, his voice a low, dangerous drawl. Panicked, I begged him to delete them, to tell me what he wanted. He stood up, closing the laptop with a definitive click. He walked toward me, until I was backed against his door. "Our parents would be devastated if these leaked," he whispered, his hand resting on the wood next to my head. "But I'm a businessman, and everything has a price. If you want my silence, you're going to have to pay for it in person." The first payment happened 2 days later. Our parents were at a charity gala, leaving the house empty and echoing. I was in my room, trying to study, but the sound of Julian's footsteps in the hallway made it impossible. He didn't knock, he just walked in. "I've been looking at that photo from the mirror again," he said, sitting on the edge of my bed. The power dynamic had shifted completely. He wasn't just my stepbrother anymore. He was my owner. He told me that the price of his silence was high, and tonight was just the interest. He heard a car pull into a neighbor's driveway and panicked her. Maybe he just liked the thrill. He grabbed my arm and pulled me into my walk-in closet, shutting the door. It was cramped, smelling of my perfume and his leather jacket. "Don't make a sound," he commanded, his breath hot against my ear. "If they come home early, you'd better hope you can stay quiet." He pushed me back against the hanging clothes. The humiliation of the blackmail should have made me hate it. But the adrenaline and the forbidden nature of his touch created a dark, confusing heat. In the darkness of that closet, the payment began. The sound of his heavy breathing. The way he would intentionally leave the door unlocked to increase the risk of being caught. And the way the payment became less about the photos and more about the connection. I realized Julian didn't want to leak the photos. He wanted me. He used the blackmail to break down the walls of our family dynamic until there was nothing left, and something much darker. Once the sun went down, Julian told me he was moving out in a week. He said he had a final payment in mind to close the debt forever. He took me back to his room. This time, he didn't use the laptop. He opened a drawer and pulled out a small, silver flash drive. "Everything is on here," he said. "You'll be free." But as the night went on, I realized I didn't want the drive. I didn't want to be free of him. The blackmail had become the only thing that made me feel alive in that house. The story ends with Julian leaving the drive on my nightstand the next morning. I picked it up, walked to the window, and watched him drive away. I didn't delete the files. I put the drive in my jewelry box, and realized, I was already waiting for him to come back and demand more. The house felt unnervingly quiet. yet his presence was everywhere. The air in the hallway still seemed to carry the scent of his leather jacket. I had the silver flash drive, my freedom, tucked away in my jewelry box, but I hadn't even plugged it in. I thought the payments were over. I found myself walking past the closet where he first trapped me, my heart racing not with fear, but with a hollow ache. Then, the first text came. It wasn't a demand. It was a photo of the front of our house taken from his car. Did you delete them yet? It read. He wasn't letting go. Our mother noticed the change. She remarked on how close Julian and I had seemed before he left. She found one of his cufflinks under my bed while vacuuming. I watched her hold it, her brow furrowed in confusion. Why would this be in here, Leo? She asked. I had to weave a web of lies on the spot, my voice trembling. The debt wasn't just between me and Julian anymore. The fallout was starting to leak into the rest of the family. I was alone in the kitchen when I heard the heavy click of the front door. I didn't have to look. I knew the weight of those footsteps. Julian hadn't returned his key. He walked into the kitchen, looking disheveled, his eyes darker than usual. The flash drive was a lie, wasn't it? I asked. He pulled a second drive from his pocket. That one was the copy. This one is the original. I realized I'm not ready to close your account, little sister. The power dynamic shifted from cold blackmail to desperate obsession. He didn't want payment anymore. He wanted a confession. He pushed me against the cold marble of the kitchen island. You didn't delete the files because you liked being mine, he whispered, his grip bruising my wrists. Stop pretending this is about the photos. He hoisted me onto the counter, sweeping the mail and car keys to the floor with a crash. In the moonlight of the kitchen, the second chapter of our secret began, far more intense and reckless than the first. The emotive core, heavy and rhythmic. This 40-minute segment focuses on the long night. The narrator should describe the shift from the kitchen to the master suite. The ultimate transgression. Julian was no longer playing the role of the older brother. He was a man possessed by the secret he had created. We moved through the house like ghosts, reclaiming every room where we had once had to hide. The narrator should emphasize the sensory details. The cold glass of the windows against my back, the sound of the grandfather clock ticking in the hall, and the raw, unfiltered intensity of Julian's final demands. He made me admit it, that I wasn't his victim anymore, but his accomplice. By 3 a.m., the blackmail was a distant memory. We were bound by something much more dangerous than photos, a shared addiction to the risk of being destroyed together. The sun began to bleed through the curtains. Julian was asleep, his arm draped heavily over me. I felt a sense of peace that I knew was a delusion. That's when I heard the gravel crunching in the driveway. My parents were home early. The panic was immediate. Julian scrambled for his clothes, but he was too slow. I heard the front door open, my mother's voice calling out my name. I looked at the 2 flash drives sitting on the nightstand, the evidence of everything we had done. The story ends with the sound of my mother's footsteps on the stairs. I grabbed the drives and shoved them under the mattress, just as the bedroom door handle began to turn. Julian was standing behind the door, invisible to her, but his shadow was cast long across the floor. The final words are my mother's. Leo, why is Julian's car in the driveway?